everyone. Hello, welcome to Ella. Welcome to our neighbor Bradley. Welcome to Leah, James, Geeta, Scott, Reed, Jens, Christiana. Good morning and welcome. Gabriella, Nora, Rupa. And good morning, Edward. All right, so good morning, Bhante Suddhāso, sadhu, 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 for teaching us every day, and in particular today, 3 times a day. Today, 3 times tomorrow, and 3 times next weekend as well. We will be studying the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So every morning we will be starting with Sutta study, and you can find the link of the Sutta in the live chat and follow along with Bhante, who will then give us meditation instructions and then lead us in guided meditation in the afternoon, and then share more Dhamma in the evening. And so we'll be doing this more or less. That's kind of like the sort of frame for all the 4 Daylongs on this. And without further ado, I can pass it on to Bhante. Welcome to Sally, Marielle, Richard, Junie. Welcome. Okay. Well, for Rich, this might be slightly redundant because actually we had started doing Sutta study. Well, like a series of classes of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So we had exactly just gone over the first foundation of mindfulness, and then the whole pandemic started. So Rich was actually present. So it will be a good refresher for you. All right, thank you.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So good morning, everyone. So welcome to the first session in our 2 consecutive weekend-long examination of the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta. So in particular, we'll be focusing on the practice of the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta. But in order to practice it, one needs to understand it. One needs to know it. And the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta is one of the most popular suttas in the Pali Canon, and it's one which many monastics over the last 2,500 years have extensively studied and extensively analyzed and spoken about. So I'm just one more in a long line of people who have gone through this discourse in detail. So I may not be adding much new to the conversation, and that's fine. And if you want a much more detailed analysis of the sutta, you have countless other resources for it. So I won't be bothering to go through it in excessive detail, but rather focusing on hitting the critical aspects of it, which relate directly to our practice. So first, the title of the sutta, Satipaṭṭhāna. So Maha means great, and Sati means mindfulness. And the term Satipaṭṭhāna is most likely a contraction of Sati and Upatthana. So Sati is mindfulness, and Upatthana is establishing or setting up. So sometimes this is translated as foundations of mindfulness. In fact, that's one of the more common translations. But Upatthana more literally means establishing. So I'm more fond of the translation establishment of mindfulness, establishing mindfulness, the 4 ways that one establishes mindfulness. So minor difference, foundations of mindfulness is also a perfectly acceptable translation. So as usual, I'll start reading through the sutta, and periodically I'll give some explanations. And again, particularly focusing on how this relates to our meditation practice. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living among the Kuru people at a Kuru village named Kamasadhamma. There the Blessed One addressed the monks. Monks, Venerable Sir, those monks replied to the Blessed One. The Blessed One said this. Monks, this is the one-way path for the purification of beings, for the complete transcendence of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and depression, for the attainment of the way, for the realization of nibbana. That is, the 4 establishments of mindfulness. So this is an important opening statement in that the Buddha is making it clear that the practice of Satipatthāna is something which leads all the way to full enlightenment. So once again, it's not about being 10% happier. It's about completely transcending sorrow, pain, and depression. It's about establishing oneself firmly on the path that leads to full enlightenment, and for directly realizing absolute reality for oneself. So it's making it really clear here that Satipatthana is itself a full path to awakening. And the term one-way path, the Pali word for this is ekayana magga. So ekayana means going one way. So the way I understand this is it means that the Satipatthana practices lead in one direction only, which is towards awakening. Ekayana magga is sometimes translated as the only path, but that's not an accurate translation. So ekayana does not mean only. Ekayana means going one way, going one direction. So then the Buddha goes on, what for? Monks, a monk abides observing the body as the body, dedicated, completely aware and mindful, without covetousness or depression about the world. One abides observing feelings as feelings, dedicated, completely aware and mindful, without covetousness or depression about the world. One abides observing the mind as the mind, dedicated, completely aware and mindful, without covetousness or depression about the world. One abides observing phenomena as phenomena, dedicated, completely aware and mindful, without covetousness or depression about the world. So these are the 4 categories, the 4 areas in which one practices establishing mindfulness. So the body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. And of these 4, today we'll be focusing particularly on the body. So I won't speak too much about the other 3 categories. So we'll get to that over the next 3 days. So tomorrow and then next Saturday and Sunday, we'll address the other 3 areas of mindfulness. Today we're focusing on the body, which is great because I'm a big fan of mindfulness of the body anyway. So first off, looking at this statement, observing the body as the body. So in Pali, this is kaye kayanupasi. So anupasi means to see or to observe or to regard. So it's from the verb passa, which means to see, and anu, which means along or in accordance with or together with. So anupasi means to look at something carefully. So to look at something in accordance with the way it is. And kaya, so kaya is body. So we're looking closely at the body. We're examining or paying attention to the body. Kaya, so this means in terms of the body. So in other words, paying attention to the body on its own terms. So not building a concept or an idea about the body, not comparing it to other things, not getting lost in thoughts or beliefs or opinions about the body, not daydreaming or fantasizing about the body, not projecting what we think the body should be, but rather trying to get in direct contact with the body on its own terms, trying to understand it as it is. And then he gives this list of qualities of mind that we should bring, attitudes that we should bring to this practice. So we should be dedicated. So not slacking in our practice. So the Pali word is atapi, which actually comes from the verb tapati, which means to burn. So it's this feeling of fervor, of like fervent dedication to something. So really committing ourselves to the practice. We should be completely aware. So that's sampajano. So sampajana means completely aware, fully understanding, and mindful. So satima, so having mindfulness, having this clear, precise awareness of the experience. And we'll talk more about what sati really means as we go through the sutta, and especially what it means in the context of Buddhist practice, because it's more than just awareness, as we'll see as we get into more of this discourse. Then it says, without covetousness or depression about the world. So in Pali, vinaya loke abhijja domanasam. So abhijja is covetousness, so this craving to get things, desire to possess things. And domanasa literally means bad mind or unpleasant mind. So it's that downheartedness or depressive attitudes that often arise when we experience things that we dislike or that we disapprove of or that we find annoying or displeasing. So we're trying to set aside covetousness and depression about the world. So not wasting our time and energy on thinking about what we want and what we want to get. Not wasting our time and energy lamenting about what we dislike or what annoys us or what makes us sad or disturbed. Setting all of that aside and just focusing on knowing the body exactly as it is, clearly, precisely, and without distraction. That's what we're trying to do. So that's the basic attitude that we bring to Satipatthāna practice. So then the Buddha goes into describing several different ways of practicing mindfulness of the body. So I'll start going through these ways, and we'll see how far we get this morning. We might divide this up into multiple sessions. So it starts, the Buddha says, monks, how does a monk abide observing the body as the body? Monks, a monk who has gone to the forest, to the base of a tree, or to an empty building, sits down, crosses his legs, sets his body upright, and establishes mindfulness as foremost. One breathes in mindfully, and one breathes out mindfully. Breathing in a long breath, one understands I am breathing in a long breath. Breathing out a long breath, one understands I am breathing out a long breath. Breathing in a short breath, one understands I am breathing in a short breath. Breathing out a short breath, one understands I am breathing out a short breath. One trains in this way, I will breathe in experiencing the whole body. One trains in this way, I will breathe out experiencing the whole body. One trains in this way, I will breathe in calming the body. One trains in this way, I will breathe out calming the body. So here he's introducing a basic form of the practice of mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati. So normally the Buddha gives a 16-step explanation of mindfulness of breathing, which I went over a few weeks ago. So you can find the video on the 16-step mindfulness of breathing. Here the Buddha is just going through the first 4, because the first 4 are directly related to the body. The other 12 aspects of the 16-step mindfulness of breathing incorporate other elements of working with the mind, but the first 4 are specifically for dealing with the body. So first off, he says, a monk who's gone to the forest, to the base of a tree, or to an empty building. So the Buddha emphasizes these as places which are peaceful, places which are relatively free of outside distractions, places where you're not likely to have your phone ring or people come up and try to talk to you or be distracted by the various duties or responsibilities that you think you have. So a place where you can just focus on your meditation practice and not need to worry about anything else, not need to get wrapped up in other things. So going to the forest, of course, is a very ancient and common practice in Buddhism. And in fact, many Buddhist monasteries are located in forests, precisely because that's a peaceful, undistracted environment for practicing meditation. Or to the base of a tree, so sitting at the foot of a tree, which also has the plus of the ground often slopes up a bit at the base of a tree, which is good if you don't have a cushion to sit on. Helps keep your back straight. Or to an empty building. So going somewhere where, again, it's just you and your meditation and nothing that will distract you or disturb you. Of course, that's optimal. If you don't have those conditions, then you just do the best you can with whatever conditions you have. And here the Buddha does specifically say to cross your legs. So for those who don't like to sit in a cross-legged posture, well, try, because the Buddha does specifically say it. So maybe the Buddha had a good reason for specifically encouraging sitting in a cross-legged position. That doesn't necessarily mean sitting full lotus, though I recommend it. And it's been recommended for 2,500 years. But if full lotus is not an option for you, then you can sit in an easier cross-legged position. Sitting upright, so having the body upright helps to promote alertness of mind, and it helps keep you feeling energetic, prevents dullness from arising in the mind, and also it prevents most of the aching and pain that you might experience during meditation. Most of the aches and pains that happen during meditation are because of bad posture. So keeping the body upright and establishing mindfulness is foremost. So this in Pali is parimukkhang sating upattapetva. So parimukha can mean foremost, the most important, that which is primary, which is the meaning that I believe it has in this case. So making mindfulness the most important thing, making it your primary concern. You'll also see this translated as establishing mindfulness around the mouth, which is another way of translating parimukha, but one which doesn't make a whole lot of sense in this context. So the Buddha uses this phrase, parimukkhang sating upattapetva, many places throughout the sutta simply to mean establishing mindfulness, without it having anything whatsoever to do with your mouth. So although you'll often see this translated as establishing mindfulness around your mouth, I don't believe that's what the Buddha meant here. It doesn't fit the context in most of the places he uses this phrase. So I translate it as establishing mindfulness as foremost. Then he goes through the first 4 steps of mindfulness of breathing. So breathing in a long breath, breathing out a long breath, breathing in a short breath, breathing out a short breath. In each case, you just understand that that's what's happening. So there's no attempt to control the breathing. Whether it's long or short doesn't matter. Many people have this belief that shallow breathing is bad and deep breathing is good, that fast breathing is bad and slow breathing is good, but that's not necessarily the case. When we're practicing mindfulness of breathing, we're not judging the breath as good or bad. We're just aware of exactly how it feels moment by moment. So if the breath is long or slow or fast or deep or shallow, it doesn't matter. What matters is the quality of attention that we bring to the experience of breathing. Then the third step is to train oneself to experience the whole body while you breathe. And I take this as exactly what it says. So while breathing in and out, you feel your entire body. You're aware of the entire body. That's what it says in the sutta, sabbakaya patisangvedi, so experiencing the whole body as you breathe in and out. You will see some translators who will add in brackets of the breath at the end of the statement, but that's adding something to the sutta which is not in the sutta. So I don't approve. I don't do that. The sutta simply says experiencing the whole body. So I take that to mean your whole body, especially since this is, once again, mindfulness of body that we're talking about. Then the fourth step, I will breathe in, calming the body. I will breathe out, calming the body. I think these days I'm translating this as I will breathe in, calming physical activity, which is a bit more precise of a translation. So the Pali word is kaya sankhara. So kaya means body, and sankhara, as we spoke about yesterday, has a broad range of meaning. So one of its meanings is activities. Kaya sankhara, bodily activities, physical activity. So this is working to bring the body into complete stillness. Stilling the body, which is an incredible support to concentration. If your body is completely still, it's much easier to enter samadhi. It's much easier for the mind to gather together, to be free of distraction, and to be clearly, precisely focused. And also when the body is very still, it's much easier to develop a subtle, precise awareness of the details of our physical experience. When a body is moving, we can usually only catch the more coarse, obvious aspects of bodily experience. But when the body is completely still, then we can start to catch incredibly minute microscopic details, which we normally wouldn't be aware of at all. So really working to still the body. So as one breathes in, stilling the body, calming the body, bringing the body to absolute stillness and steadiness. Then the Buddha gives a simile. He says, monks, just as a skilled turner or apprentice turner, so this is a woodworker, so someone who carves wood. So I think what this is referring to is when you have, like when you're carving something and you have it on a turntable or a lathe, and as it's spinning, then you're carving off the outer edge in order to make a long turning cut on the piece of wood. So a skilled turner or apprentice turner who is making a long turn understands I am making a long turn, or in making a short turn understands I am making a short turn. In the same way, when a monk is breathing in a long breath, he understands I'm breathing in a long breath, and he goes through the first 4 steps of mindfulness of breathing again. So once again, it's clearly knowing the process of breathing as it's happening, clearly knowing the sensations of breathing as it's happening, and then using that as a basis to train oneself in experiencing the whole body with that same degree of intensity of alertness, and bringing the body to absolute stillness. Then the Buddha goes into the refrain. And we see this paragraph, this refrain, we see all throughout the sutta, and it's extremely important because it's part of what shows that Satipatthana is much more than just attention. It's much more than just paying attention to our experience. So the Buddha says, in this way, one abides observing the body as the body internally, or one abides observing the body as the body externally, or one abides observing the body as the body both internally and externally. So these 3 ways of being aware of the body, internally, externally, and both. One way that this is understood is internally means within the body, and externally refers to the outer layer of the body. So normally the part of the body that we're most aware of is the external part of the body. We're aware of the skin. We're aware of everything on the surface of the body. So just the outermost layer of the body. But actually, it's possible to feel everything inside the body as well. We just normally don't pay much attention unless there's something going wrong in there. If you have a stomach ache, then suddenly you're intensely aware of your stomach. Or if you're having breathing problems, suddenly you're intensely aware of your lungs. or something stuck in your throat, then you're intensely aware of your esophagus. But unless there's something wrong on the inside of our body, we normally don't pay much attention to it. So one can take this observing the body internally is to be clearly aware of the internal experience of the body. And observing the body externally is being aware of the outside layer of the body, that thin layer of skin surrounding the body, which is what we normally pay most of our attention to. So we're trying to develop a clear awareness of both, a clear awareness of the whole body, both the inside and outside aspects of it. Another way this is explained is that observing the body internally means your own body, and the body externally means other people's bodies. But I find that quite implausible because it's pretty challenging to be clearly aware of the sensations of somebody else's body, especially when you're meditating by yourself. So I don't think that's what the Buddha means, but you will see some teachers who take that standpoint. So if you're interested in that viewpoint, you can find their explanations and justifications as to why. But that's not the viewpoint that I take on this one. So again, observing the body internally means inside, and externally means the outer layer. And we're trying to develop awareness of both internal and external of the body. Then he continues, or one abides observing the nature of manifestation in relation to the body, or one abides observing the nature of cessation in relation to the body, or one abides observing the nature of both manifestation and cessation in relation to the body. So here he's talking about observing impermanence, recognizing impermanence. So the nature of manifestation, the nature of arising, is being, some Pali says samudaya dhamma. So the nature of experience is to come into being, the nature of a sensation to appear. And then cessation, so this is not the usual word for cessation, nirodha, but rather this is vaya. So vaya literally just means going away or vanishing. So vaya dhamma, so the nature of vanishing, the nature of disappearing, going away. So noticing that the sensations of the body are constantly appearing and disappearing, arising and vanishing. And this is happening every single moment. So every single moment, the sensations of the body appear and then disappear immediately. So there's three ways of practicing with the recognition of impermanence that the Buddha gives here. One is to focus on observing the arising of sensation. So noticing the new sensations appearing every moment. The second way is to observe the nature of disappearing. So observing that every moment the sensations are vanishing. Every moment the sensations that are present are disappearing. And the third is to simultaneously observe both arising and vanishing. And this is where things start to get extremely interesting. Because when your attention is developed to this laser sharp precision through practicing mindfulness and concentration, and you turn your attention to observing the appearing and vanishing of sensations, then you'll notice that the sensations are appearing and vanishing at the same moment. There's no gap in time between appearing and vanishing. It's simultaneous. And when you directly see the simultaneous appearing and vanishing of sensations, then sensations no longer appear solid. The body no longer seems to be a solid object. It seems to be half real, transparent, insubstantial. So this is a radical shift in how we relate to our body. Switching from relating to the body as a solid, persistent object to perceiving it as an insubstantial, temporary appearance and disappearance. And this is very important because this is how we start to break our attachment to the body. It's how we start to break our identification as the body. And it's how we start to let go of the massive suffering that we have built up around our experience of our body. So this again is where we start to see a clear departure from merely attention. So it's not just attention, it's also directing the mind towards recognizing the insubstantial, impermanent, continuously arising and ceasing nature of bodily experience. So this is an incredibly profound practice. And it's the main practice that I do. It's the main practice that, the main meditation practice that I do on a daily basis. Then the Buddha continues, or mindfulness that there is the body is established to the extent necessary for knowledge and awareness. So this is a more basic practice. So just being aware that the body is here. So you don't necessarily need to practice with this incredibly sharp, precise focus. If that seems out of reach to you at this time, that's okay. Just maintain awareness of the body in a more general sense. Just keep your awareness on the existence of the body. Awareness that the body is here. Without getting too wrapped up in trying to be ultra precise about it. Just keep your awareness on the body, on the existence of the body, presence of the body. And as time goes by, as you keep directing attention to general awareness of the body, then your attention will become sharper and more precise. The mind will become less distracted and more collected around the experience of the body. So this is getting a more gentle way of approaching mindfulness of the body. So for those who find the laser sharp precision approach to be agitating or unsettling or uncomfortable, there's a more gentle way, which is just to be aware. The body is here. Yeah, it's here. I feel it, it's here. And just rest in that general awareness of the presence of the body. And through this way, you'll develop serenity, you'll develop concentration, and slowly, 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 your mindfulness will build of its own accord. That's another way of approaching the practice of mindfulness of the body. Then the Buddha closes with a very important statement. He says, and one abides independent and one does not cling to anything in the world. So this is the practice of non-attachment, the practice of renunciation, the practice of letting go, which is the critical linchpin of Buddhist practice. So ultimately, Buddhist practice is all about letting go. It's all about renunciation, because it's recognizing that absolutely anything that we hold on to causes suffering. Absolutely anything that we hold on to causes us pain. And that when we let go, then there's no problem. That there's only a problem for as long as we try to hold on to things that cannot be held on to, which is everything. Nothing can be held on to. Nothing is possible to hold on to. So one does not cling to anything in the world. One does not depend upon anything in the world. One recognizes that everything in the world is impermanent, insubstantial, impossible to hold on to, and that any effort to hold on to anything in the body is simply going to make us unhappy. So we practice not holding on, allowing the body to vanish moment after moment. And the Buddha says, monks, in this way, a monk abides observing the body as the body. So that's the first section. That's the brief explanation of mindfulness of breathing and the general overview of how to take this from being mere awareness into a profoundly transformative insight into the insubstantial nature of phenomena and the practice of letting go of attachment and aversion in relation to the body. So I'll go through some more aspects of mindfulness of the body before going into questions this morning. So next, the Buddha says, monks, when moving, a monk understands I am moving. When standing, one understands I am standing. When sitting, one understands I am sitting. When reclining, one understands I am reclining. Or in whatever way the body is positioned, one understands it as it is. In this way, one abides, observing the body as the body, and he goes through the whole closing paragraph as before. So internally, externally, in both, manifesting, vanishing in both, mindfulness that there is the body, not clinging to anything in the world. So the whole paragraph again. So this is another more general way of practicing mindfulness of the body. So just knowing whatever position your body is in. So right now, those of us who are in the room here at the monastery are sitting. So it's knowing that the body is sitting. When we're standing, knowing that we're standing. When we're walking, knowing that we're walking. When we're lying down, knowing that we're lying down. So this seems like a relatively silly practice. It might seem like a relatively easy thing to do, but try as you go throughout your day to always be clearly aware what position your body is in. And in particular, watch for the transition times. Often we're sitting, and the next thing we know, we're walking. And it's like, wait a minute, what was the transition when I went from walking to standing and standing, or when I went from sitting to standing and standing to walking, or from walking to standing and standing to sitting? Where was the transition? How did I miss that? So you'll start to notice that there's these odd little blank zones littered throughout our day, little blank zones where we weren't really aware of what our body was doing. We weren't really aware of what position or movement our body was engaged in. So starting to bring some clear awareness to that. So when you're sitting, know that you're sitting. As you transition from sitting to standing, know that you're transitioning from sitting to standing. When you're standing, know that you're standing. When you transition from standing to walking, know that you're transitioning from standing to walking. And while you're walking, know that you're walking. So being clearly aware of the postures of the body, the positions of the body as it moves throughout the day, as it goes through everything that it does. And again, particularly paying attention to the transition times, because that's where we tend to be the most oblivious to what the body is actually doing. And you'll note that this is not limited just to meditation practice, but actually it's whatever kind of body movement or posture or position that one is doing. Then the next one, the Buddha says, monks, a monk is completely aware while moving forward or backward. One is completely aware while looking around or examining. One is completely aware while contracting or extending one's limbs. One is completely aware while wearing one's robes and carrying one's bowl. One is completely aware while eating, drinking, chewing, and swallowing. One is completely aware while defecating and urinating. One is completely aware while moving, standing, sitting, reclining, awake, speaking, and silent. In this way, one abides observing the body as the body. So again, making it clear that this practice of awareness goes well beyond mere meditation practice, but rather it's something that we should be doing through all of our activities. So whether walking around or looking around or moving your arms and legs or putting on your clothes in the morning, picking up your dishes to have lunch, while you're eating, while you're drinking, while you're chewing, while you're swallowing, while you're using the toilet. So whatever you're doing, even when you're speaking, always to be clearly aware of your body at all times, in all activities. And as you engage in this practice, you'll start to notice that there's certain areas of your day, certain areas of your activities where you're particularly oblivious. One example of this actually is using the restroom. A lot of people, there's this odd blank zone in their mind. Like they go in the bathroom and they just kind of pretend that nothing's happening, and then they wash their hands and they leave. It's like, well, no, don't pretend that nothing is happening. Be clearly aware of exactly what's going on with your body as you're using the toilet. Another common example is putting clothes on in the morning. An interesting practice to start watching for is when putting on your socks. Which foot do you put the sock on first? Or if you wear trousers, I don't, I'm a monk, I wear robes. But if you wear trousers, which leg do you put in the trousers first? Very interesting. You'll start to notice, or you'll start to notice that you don't notice. You'll catch yourself a few minutes after you got dressed and you'll be like, oh, I actually have no idea which sock I put on first. I have no idea which leg I put in first. Or you're putting on your shirt. Well, which arm do you stick through first? Again, you'll have to find you have no idea. So starting to develop this clear, precise awareness through all your activities. And eating, drinking, chewing, and swallowing. This is also very important. So while we're eating and drinking, we often get so wrapped up in desire and craving and attachment, or aversion and disgust if you don't like what you're eating. But usually desire and attachment, we get so wrapped up in it that we're not really paying much attention to the actual sensations of eating, chewing, drinking, and swallowing. So really paying close attention to all the details, being really totally present with the ever-changing experience of eating, drinking, chewing, and swallowing. Again, these are ways of extending our practice all throughout our day. So a common question that people ask is they'll say, oh, I've been meditating for however long, maybe even many, many years. But my samadhi is really bad. My concentration is really bad. What can I do to improve it? And the question is, what are you doing with the rest of your time? What are you doing when you think you're not meditating? Usually that's where the problem is. Usually the problem is not so much with what the person is doing during meditation, but the problem is with what they're doing the rest of the time. The problem is because the rest of their day, they're cultivating obliviousness, they're cultivating dullness, they're cultivating spaciness, they're cultivating desire and aversion, they're cultivating distraction, they're cultivating scatteredness, they're cultivating daydreaming. So all of that adds up to really bad samadhi. And then they go to meditate, and the mind just keeps doing what it's been doing the rest of the time, which is scatteredness, dullness, spaciness, daydreaming, desire, aversion, and so on. Of course, that's because that's what we've trained the mind to do. It's kind of like if you have a dog, and you're trying to teach your dog to sit when ordered, but 95% of the time, when you say the word sit, you actually get it to stand. And then the 5% of the time that you want it to sit, and you tell it to sit, you wonder why it stands. Well, that's because that's what you trained it to do 95% of the time. It's like, well, no wonder that's what it keeps doing. Similarly, we spend 95% of our time training our mind to be scattered, disturbed, desirous, aversive, confused, spacey, dull, restless. And then we sit down to meditate and we wonder why our mind keeps doing those things. Well, that's because that's what we've trained it to do. Our mind is just doing what we've taught it to do. This should not come as any surprise. So the Buddha here is really emphasizing that meditation practice is not just what you do while sitting cross-legged under a tree, but also it's bringing your practice into every single aspect of what you do, every single detail of your life. Even the things that you don't want to be aware of. Next, the Buddha goes into the meditation on the parts of the body. So this is one which is going to require a bit of explanation, so bear with me. The Buddha says, monks, a monk considers this body up from the soles of the feet and down from the top of the head as a skin bag filled with a variety of unclean things. In this body, there are head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, muscles, tendons, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, membrane, spleen, lungs, stomach, intestines. Chyme? The heck is chyme? Chyme? Stomach contents. Okay. Wow, what an exceptionally unusual word. Excrement, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, oil, and saliva. Monks, it is just like a bag with an opening on both ends that is full of various kinds of grain. such as white rice, brown rice, beans, lentils, sesame seeds, and red rice. After pouring them out, a person with eyesight could identify them. This is white rice, this is brown rice, these are beans, these are lentils, these are sesame seeds, this is red rice. Monks, in the same way, a monk considers this body. And he goes through the list again. In this way, one abides observing the body as the body. So this is the practice of being clearly aware of all the components of the body, inside and out. And this is not a practice of cultivating disgust with the body. So you'll notice in the simile he gives, it's a person who has a bag full of rice and beans and lentils and such. And the person knows this is white rice, this is brown rice, these are beans, these are lentils. The person is not thinking, oh, disgusting beans, hideous. Oh, lentils, how vile, I hate lentils. No, the person is just calmly, coolly, peacefully recognizing that is white rice, that is brown rice, those are beans, those are lentils, those are sesame seeds. So in the same way, this practice is not one of hating your body or being disgusted with your body, but it's one of clearly knowing in detail your body inside and out. So actually feeling your lungs. What do your lungs feel like? Feeling your kidneys. Do you know you can feel your kidneys? Feeling your intestines. You know you can feel your intestines? You can feel all of your internal organs. They're right here. We just like to pretend they're not here, but they're right here. Again, we normally only pay attention to these things when they go drastically wrong. But they're always right here. And they're available if we pay attention. So cultivating that clear awareness of the internal components of the body as well as the external. So again, this is one way of relating to the practice where the Buddha said to be aware of the body internally. So one way of doing that is through trying to feel all of these internal aspects of the body. Then I'll do one more and then we'll switch to questions and I'll go through the rest. Well, actually, maybe I'll get through all the body today. It's not too much more. Then mindfulness of the elements. The Buddha says, monks, a monk considers this body, however it is positioned or directed, as composed of elements. In this body, there is the earth element, the water element, the heat element, the wind element. So normally I like to teach the 6 elements, which is these 4 plus space and consciousness, as that's a complete practice of examining body and mind. Here the Buddha, since he's focusing on the body, he only gives the first 4 elements. So this is the experience of solidity, of the solid matter of the body, liquidity, the liquid, watery aspects of the body experience, heat, so the warmth of the body, the temperature aspect of the body, and wind, so the air element of the body. So being clearly aware of these aspects of the body. And usually this is done one at a time. So you focus on the earth element for a while, then you focus on the water element for a while, then you focus on the heat element for a while, and then you focus on the air element for a while. And if you're going to take on this practice, I actually recommend spending an entire meditation period on one element at a time, at least in the beginning when you're still getting familiar with the elements and what they feel like. So this is just another way of developing a precise, clear awareness of the different aspects of our body, different aspects of our physical experience. And the Buddha gives a simile here. He says, monks, just as a skilled butcher or apprentice butcher, after killing a cow and slicing it into pieces, might sit at a crossroads, in the same way, monks, a monk considers this body, however it is positioned or directed, as composed of elements. In this body, there is the earth element, the water element, the heat element, the wind element. So similarly, dividing up our experience. So just as the butcher divides up the dead cow into different pieces, we divide up our experience into these 4 kinds of experience, the 4 aspects of experience. So solidity, fluidity, heat, and motion. So earth, water, fire, and air. So for more information, you can look back to the video on the meditation on the 6 elements for a bit more detail on how to do that practice. Then finally, for mindfulness of body, next the Buddha goes through the contemplation of body decomposition. So the other day, somebody was asking why the Buddha goes into so much detail on body decomposition. Well, that's not the right question to ask. The right question to ask is, why are you so annoyed about the detail the Buddha went into? That's the right question to ask. Why did this bother you that the Buddha goes into so much detail on body decomposition? And the answer is quite simple. Attachment to the body. That's why. That's probably the answer. But look for yourself. You might have a different answer. Monks, just as if a monk were to see a corpse discarded in a cemetery, which at that time in ancient India, they, generally speaking, they did not burn bodies or bury bodies. They would just throw the dead body outside the perimeter of the village. They would just throw it on the ground outside the village. And so the body would just rot and decompose on its own. Scavengers would come and chew off bits of it. So at any time, somebody who wanted to contemplate body decomposition could just go outside the village and you would find dead bodies in various stages of decomposition. So these days it's a bit harder to see these sorts of things because we do a lot to try to hide decomposing bodies. But at the time of the Buddha, it was quite easy. You just went outside the village and you'd see rotting bodies in every stage of decomposition. So one were to see a corpse discarded in a cemetery, 1, 2, or 3 days old, that was bloated, discolored, and festering, he would compare it to this body. This body is also of that nature. It is becoming like that. It is not exempt from that. In this way, one abides observing the body as the body. So the first one, so it's a body that's relatively newly dead. So it's in the early stages of decomposition. It's just a little bit discolored and swollen and not very nice looking. But it's still pretty freshly dead. Still looks pretty much like a human body. And the practice here, as with each of these stages of body decomposition, the practice is to reflect, this body, my own body, is of exactly the same nature as that body. This body is becoming like that body. This body is not exempt from that body's fate. So the practice is to recognize that your body is not at all different from the dead body. They're made up of exactly the same components, exactly the same aspects, exactly the same nature. And your own body is going to become exactly like that rotting body, that dead body. So again, it's a way of coming to a clear recognition of the nature of the body, because we tend to think, even if we know it's not true, we tend to have this deep belief that our body is this nice, warm, pleasant, solid, living thing, which is going to keep living and moving and being warm and solid and reliable. But that's, of course, not remotely true. This body is destined to become a corpse. This body is eventually going to die. It's going to stop moving. It's going to turn cold. It's going to start rotting. That's what bodies do. So we need to recognize that that's the nature of this body, to start to break through that deep set delusion that this body is reliable and dependable as a living vehicle for our experience of the world. We need to break through that delusion and recognize that this body is not reliable, and it's most certainly not immortal. And it's not who we are. It's not me, and it doesn't belong to me. It's just a body. It's just part of the natural world. So the next stage, just as if a monk were to see a corpse discarded in a cemetery that was being eaten by crows, hawks, vultures, dogs, jackals, and worms. he would compare it to this body. This body is also of that nature. It is becoming like that. It is not exempt from that. In this way, one abides observing the body as the body. So reflecting that your body will be food for other sentient beings, which is actually kind of encouraging. At least then we know it's not going to waste. So there's a practice in Tibetan Buddhism where when someone dies, they put their body out to be eaten by vultures. They call this sky burial. So the idea is that even after you're dead, you still have the opportunity to be generous, and that you can generously give the meat of your body to all the sentient beings who live on meat. Isn't that so generous? So generous that even after death, we still want to give to others. It's just beautiful. Tragically, it's illegal in this country. But it's just a beautiful practice. I wish it wasn't illegal. I would happily donate my body to scavengers. Poor little buddies, they need to eat too. They got to eat something. And it's so weird. We take this wonderful piece of meat, this wonderful food, and what do? We buy like a $2,000 box, and we stick this body in this expensive box, and then we bury it in the ground. What a waste. Or we burn it. What a waste. What are we doing? There are starving beings out there who would love to have some nice fresh meat. And what do? We burn it or we bury it. Why? Because we don't like to see dead bodies. So weird. So weird. Anyway, so if it becomes legal before I die, I want my body to be fed to scavengers so that somebody at least will get some benefit from this meat. But just recognizing this body is food for other sentient beings, and that's okay. There's no problem there. That's just the nature of bodies. All bodies are made up of the same basic stuff, dirt, water, heat, and air. So we can all trade around the components. It's totally fine. And then he goes into more stages of decomposition: a corpse discarded in a cemetery, a skeleton with flesh and blood bound together by sinews. So this is where the flesh is starting to rot and you're starting to see the bones underneath. A fleshless, bloody skeleton bound together by sinews. So at this point, most of the flesh is rotted away, but the skeleton is still relatively intact. A fleshless, bloodless skeleton bound together by sinews. So at this point, even the fluids have evaporated. Disconnected bones scattered in every direction. A hand bone in one direction, a foot bone, an ankle bone, a calf bone, a thigh bone, a hip bone, a rib bone, a spine bone, a breastbone, a neck bone, a jaw bone, a tooth, a skull in another direction. So this has almost a musical nature to it. There's one senior monk I know, Ajahn Suddhāso, who recommends memorizing this list and chanting it to yourself like a little song. A hand bone, a foot bone, an ankle bone, a calf bone, a thigh bone, a hip bone, a rib bone, a spine bone, a breastbone, a neck bone, a jaw bone, a tooth, a skull. So you can do that if you like, just reflecting that eventually this body will be scattered bones, disconnected and scattered around. May is really happy with this one. Yeah, you dig it. Again, though, this is not just something that we do out of some childlike morbid fascination, but rather it's something that we do in order to understand the nature of this body. This body is filled with bones. We normally don't think of it that way, but actually there's, like right in this room, there's 3 skeletons. But we're so focused on the skin that we don't think about the bones that the skin is wrapped around. I mean, I do because I'm really bony. But this is the nature of things. Like you can actually see like little bits of bone sticking out here and there. Actually, you've got bones sticking out too. Okay.
Are you surprised? Okay, they don't have to answer.
Story for another time. So again, it's recognizing that this body is made up of bones, and that eventually those bones will not be connected together anymore. They'll be disconnected and scattered. So it's also recognizing the nature of all the body components to scatter and disperse. We think of the body as being a cohesive unit, but actually it's not a cohesive unit. It's a bunch of individual components which are all arising and ceasing and subject to scattering and dispersion. And actually, even while we're alive, it's scattering and dispersing. You walk through a room and you're shedding off bits of skin and hair as you walk through the room. I remember reading a while back that 90% of household dust is human skin and hair. So when you sweep the floor, you're sweeping up dead body. That's what you're doing. Little chunks of dead body. Fun, isn't it? So you can reflect. Next time you sweep the floor, you can be like, oh, I'm sweeping up little dead parts of my body. And just recognizing that's just the nature of the body. And so we eat food, we're putting more dust into the body, and we're constantly shedding skin and hair. So we're dropping off dust from the body. So then bones as white as conch shells, a pile of bones more than a year old, bones crumbling to dust. So this is where I actually really like it, when we get to the stage of bones crumbling to dust, because this is where the decomposition process has progressed all the way from a fresh, meaty body, all the way to where the body is just crumbling into dust, and the dust is mixing back with the soil, to the point where it's like there was never a body there in the first place. So there's a really lovely saying from Christianity, which goes really well in Buddhism as well. From dust you came, and from dust you shall return. Of course, there's no you, so we would say, from dust this body came, and to dust this body shall return. So this body is made up of dirt, and after it dies, it's going to decompose and become dirt again. So it's just the cycles of nature. Dirt becomes flesh, becomes dirt, becomes flesh, becomes dirt, becomes flesh, becomes dirt. That's just the way things are. So there's also a meditation practice which I've occasionally done using the stages of body decomposition. So as you're sitting here, first you start by clearly feeling the body as a living body. And then you visualize the body turning cold, losing its color, the skin starting to rot and flake away, gradually the flesh and blood rotting and flaking away, the bones withering and collapsing and crumbling into dust and melting back into the soil until there's nothing here at all. And recognizing this is exactly what's going to happen to the body, because that's the nature of bodies. So this is another way that we can practice mindfulness of the body. And again, this is a practice not just of feeling the body in terms of awareness, but also recognizing the nature of the body and breaking our attachment to the body. So this is Buddhism. We're all about non-attachment. It's all about breaking our obsession with things. So there's a brief overview of the section on mindfulness of the body. So this time I'd like to take some questions, and then I'll talk a bit about how to practice for the rest of the day. So if we could go ahead and take some questions.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That was beautiful. Bhante, thank you so much. And there are a few amusing comments and quite a few questions as well. Reed says, oh my God, the little dance. Ha ha ha. Skeleton dance. Great song. Bone rap. Stuck in my head now. Stuck in my head too, says Lilia. Hand bone, foot bone, ankle bone. So everybody's quite excited by the little dance and song. All right, let's scroll all the way to the top. Oh, James, Sally, and friends are encouraging people to donate to the monastery. Thank you, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So you can go to buddhistinsights.com/donate if you can and are interested. And Jane says, Bhante, this question has been on my mind over a year now regarding this sutta. Sujato, Tanisaro, and others have all shared the similar concern that this sutta has been taken out of context by using it as a standalone example of awakening without samadhi /jhana/dry insight. The question is, what has your research and experience with this sutta been regarding its checked history with some, like Bhante Suddhāso arguing it was compiled at a much later date? And then there's actually like a little bit of a debate ensuing between Javier and James about the when and how the historical sort of compilation of the sutta. But maybe you can share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so this is one of the more challenging things about relating to the suttas, is that it is virtually inescapable that the Pali Canon has been tampered with, at least a little bit, over the centuries after the Buddha died. The extent to which it was tampered with is difficult to say for sure. Personally, I suspect the tampering was fairly minor. There's a few things which were clearly later additions, which usually stand out because they don't line up with things the Buddha said over and over and over again. So, for example, there's a very small number of blatantly misogynist things in the Pali Suttas, which contrast sharply with the Buddhist saying over and over and over again that gender is utterly irrelevant to the path of awakening. So there's things like that which we can really clearly dismiss as being the result of later tampering. And there's also most likely been a certain amount of editing and alteration done here and there, probably some of it for quite innocuous reasons, quite harmless reasons. And some of it maybe to try to push a certain agenda. Some of it might have just happened accidentally as the process of text transmission. So what I recommend actually is to use the system the Buddha recommended, which is to constantly compare to the rest of the suttas. So the Satipatthāna Sutta, as a standalone text, doesn't really mean much of anything, because no sutta means much of anything as a standalone text. Any sutta is not meant to be a standalone text. Any sutta is meant to be understood in the context of all of the other suttas. So actually, yeah, I would agree that the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta should not be taken as a standalone document, but rather it should be taken as part of the Pali Canon, which does talk extensively about things like samadhi, which does talk extensively about the critical importance of practicing jhana. So no, I don't believe that the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta is meant to be a standalone text, or that it provides a complete path in and of itself. But rather that Satipatthana practice is meant to build upon the foundation of sila and samadhi. That it's meant to build upon the foundation of morality and generosity. It's meant to build upon the development of the Noble Eightfold Path. And in fact, when we get into the last section, it does actually even talk about the Noble Eightfold Path. That does come up later on, which even includes talking about the four jhanas. So later on in the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta, we even come across the four jhanas again. So using the Mahasatipaṭṭhāna Sutta to justify practicing without jhana is actually missing the fact that the Mahasatipaṭṭhāna Sutta also includes jhana. So honestly, I really don't understand where the dry insight camp came from, because the Pali Suttas do not give support for that viewpoint at all. And the Mahasatipaṭṭhāna Sutta probably has been edited and altered a bit, but given that doctrinally it doesn't clash with the rest of the suttas, I don't personally have a problem with it. So whatever tampering was done doesn't seem to have harmed the message of the sutta. It still fits with everything else the Buddha said. What is interesting, though, and I'm not the expert on this, Bhante Analayo is much better than I am at these sorts of things, is scholars who like to do cross-comparison, again, like Bhante Analayo, have compared this sutta with the versions preserved in the other editions of the Tripitaka. and found some remarkable, interesting variations, especially in the fourth category of mindfulness. So when we get to the fourth area of mindfulness, I'll talk in more detail about those differences. But in the areas of body, not much difference. Minor things, but nothing substantial. The biggest difference is in the fourth area, which we'll talk about next weekend. Did I address the whole question? Okay.
Yeah. And James actually is saying, thank you, Bhante. I'm glad the question was in fact conducive to practice and useful for understanding the fact that jhana is built in it. And let me scroll back up. Reed says, quoting you, the rest of the day they're cultivating obliviousness, ... daydreaming. Phew, yep. And Dan says, Bhante, thank you for this opportunity. This is most exquisite practice. I agree. I wish may I practice all the time. I wonder, does tranquilizing bodily formation relate to Piti Sukha tranquility sequence? Is it stilling this arising/passing of sensations in whole body? Or is it just a simpler keep calm, carry on? Is seeing arising, passing of sensations the same as piti?
No, and no. Just hold still. Next question. Don't overthink this practice. Just hold still. Okay, keep going.
And Sally says, looks like the mind won't work the way we expect. Before, I always thought once I sit down, I can switch the mind to meditation mode.
Well, you can. It just takes training. And that training should be going on also when you're not formally practicing meditation. So this is really, really important. If you want good meditation, then you need to keep training your mind at all times, 24/7. Well, I'll give you a pass while you're sleeping, 16/7. So every waking hour, you should be training your mind to be peaceful, to be alert, to be calm, to be present, all the time. Okay?
And Scott says, unfortunately, for most of us, cultivating obliviousness doesn't do the trick for whoever develops 4 establishments of mindfulness in this way for 7 days can expect to attain final knowledge in this life. Or if there is some remainder, non-return.
So you're getting a little ahead. That's at the very end of the sutta. So we're still at the beginning of the sutta. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, next weekend. And Reed says, Bhante, how should we approach these different techniques? As techniques that should each be worked with extensively, as techniques that should sometimes be used in reaction to arising issues, such as the 32 parts in response to lust, or as a buffet where a practitioner can simply choose 1 or 2 that works best for him or her?
Well, I recommend experimenting with each one and seeing how you feel with it, seeing how it affects your mind, seeing how it works for you. So over the course of my monastic life, I've experimented with a lot of different meditation methods. And some of them, I used them a few times. And I was like, well, I'm not really such a fan of this one. It doesn't really seem to click for me. So for example, I experimented with kasina meditation for a few weeks. And that was fun. It was interesting. But it didn't really work so well for me. So I dropped it. Decided that wasn't the best option for me. That might change. Maybe at some point in the future, I'll get interested in kasina meditation again. I think it's unlikely, but it's possible. So experiment. Actually, I recommend if you come across a meditation method in the sutta that you've never done before, try it out. And optimally, give it a really good shot. Like when I was doing kasina meditation, I was doing it several hours a day for weeks. So really giving it a serious go. Not like sit down for 5 minutes and you're like, okay, that didn't work, moving on. But like really give it a serious shot. not just like dipping your toe in the water, but actually jump in and see how the water feels. Immerse yourself in it for a little while and see how it feels. But really watch your mind. And if you're getting really bad results, stop immediately. So this does sometimes come up with practices like the 31 parts of the body. There's 31, not 32. So the commentaries added on a 32nd part. So then everybody thinks of it as the 32 parts, but the Buddha only gave 31. So the 31 parts of the body. I assume is making her little frustrated Italian hand gesture.
No.
Anyway, so sometimes while people do the 31 parts of the body, they start to get disgusted. They start to feel aversion and hostility towards their body. Well, in that case, you should stop because something's going wrong. You don't want to just keep fueling that disgust, fueling that aversion, because that's just building up unwholesome mind states. So if something's going terribly wrong, then you should stop. But otherwise, carry on with the meditation for a while. And a while depends upon how much time you're willing to devote to things. And really see what happens. Sometimes you don't really get an appreciation for a meditation method until you do it a few hours a day for several days or even a few weeks. And then you start to get a sense of like, oh, that's what this is. That's how this works. And then maybe you decide after that, and I see how it works and I don't want to do it anymore. It's not my cup of tea. Or maybe you'll be like, oh, I'm glad I gave this a try because now I have a new tool that can really serve me well. So experiment with all of them. See what they feel like. See how it goes. Okay.
All right, thank you, Bhante. And Bradley is sharing that he accidentally burned his wrist yesterday. It's minor, but it was a real reminder of impermanence and the not self nature of the body. You're like, oh, look at my beautiful body burning. And lots of people are happy to become warm food as well.
Worm food or warm food?
Warm. Perhaps also warm.
So warm food for the worms.
Food. Oh, that's difficult to pronounce.
Worm.
What? I bet.
Okay,
I
English
can't.
lessons later.
And okay, so Reed says 31 parts, not 32. Interesting.
Now the commentaries added brain to the list, which I think is a bit unnecessary. But that's beside the point. If you want to add brain, it's fine.
Yeah, point being, there's parts of the body you can contemplate. Reed also says, quotes, if something's going really wrong, can you give some examples of what that might mean? Like strong, ugly aversion arising with contemplation of the 31 exclamation points parts?
Yeah, you already addressed that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I spoke about.
And that was the last question.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so again, what I recommend for the day is to work with mindfulness of the body. So you have here a few different ways of practicing mindfulness of the body. So the first one is the basic breath meditation, the first 4 steps of the Anapanasati instructions. You have the general practice of just being aware of the body. You have mindfulness of body postures. So moving, standing, sitting, and reclining. You have complete awareness while engaging in all activities. So whether moving, looking, extending or contracting your arms and legs, putting on your clothes, picking up your dishes, eating, drinking, chewing, swallowing, defecating, urinating, speaking, and silent. So during all your activities, being completely aware. There's the opportunity of going through the 31 parts of your body. There's the practice of the elements, in this case, the 4 elements, since we're focusing just on the body. And then there's the stages of body decomposition. So go ahead and experiment with these methods. Dig deeply into them. Really spend some time cultivating this clear, precise knowing of your body as it is on its own terms. And you can also integrate the recognition of impermanence, as the Buddha said, to be aware of appearing and vanishing in the body, the arising and ceasing of the body moment by moment. And practice non-attachment towards the body, the willingness to let go of the body moment after moment after moment. So those are my instructions for the day. So at this time, you can go ahead and do sitting meditation and walking meditation, practicing mindfulness of the body. At around noon, you can have a lunch break, have a nice, quiet, simple lunch. Then at 2:30, we'll come back together for some meditation practice together, and also a chance if you've been doing some meditation practice and you have some questions related to your meditation, you can bring them up at 2:30 as well. And then finally at 7:30, we'll end the day with some chanting and meditation together then as well. Okay, so may your practice go well.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, see you later at 2:30 p.m. Have a great